Myth or real? King Arthur. The legend of King Arthur is one of the most fascinating in medieval history. His name resonates across the centuries, but to this day, we ask ourselves, was he a real historical figure, or just a myth shaped by the imagination of men over time? The journey we're about to take will try to find an answer to this question. The story of King Arthur has been told in countless forms, from medieval texts to modern-day films and books. But what's the truth behind the legend? Is there a historical Arthur, or is he a mere symbol of chivalric ideals? Let's explore. It all starts in the 6th century, with some mentions of a British leader named Arthur in ancient texts. Geoffrey of Monmouth, in the 12th century, was one of the first to popularize his story in the famous work Historia Regum Britannia. But was he simply creating a narrative, or was he recounting something that really happened? Geoffrey was undoubtedly one of the key figures in shaping Arthur as a noble and fearless king, but his sources are imprecise and sometimes contradictory. In this context, King Arthur begins to take shape, initially as a military leader who supposedly defended Britain from Saxon invasions. But what was real and what was invented? Over the centuries, Arthur's story becomes increasingly enshrouded in myths, with the addition of figures like Merlin, the sword Excalibur, and the mythical Round Table. Geoffrey's writings, along with other early sources, contribute to the blending of history and myth, where Arthur's character becomes more than just a leader. It becomes a symbol of everything chivalric and noble. As the centuries passed, Arthur's story spread throughout Europe. Writers and troubadours began adding their own versions, from the early medieval chronicles to the chivalric romances of the Middle Ages. The Round Table became a symbol of an idealized nobility, with knights embarking on dangerous quests, such as the search for the Holy Grail. These stories continued to evolve, with each retelling adding layers to Arthur's character and the world around him. The Knights of Arthur were often portrayed as paragons of virtue and courage, upholding the ideals of chivalry. But behind their bravery, the legend starts to show human weaknesses, betrayals, doubts, and moral dilemmas that are so prominent in the story of the king. Sir Lancelot's affair with Queen Guinevere, the treachery of Mordred, and Arthur's own internal struggles all serve to make the legend much more complex. The Round Table wasn't just a place for knights to gather. It was a symbol of the challenges and contradictions within Arthur's kingdom. What is fascinating is that, over time, Arthur is no longer just a king or a warrior. He becomes a symbol of an ideal, of a time when the values of honor, loyalty, and courage were exalted. However, Arthur's figure and his knights were always viewed differently, depending on the era and culture. During the Renaissance, for example, Arthur's myth was reimagined with a more philosophical and idealistic tone, while in the 19th century, the myth was associated with a mythical past and the struggle for British national identity. However, many scholars still question whether Arthur was, in fact, a real historical figure. There are a few references that may point to a leader by that name, but no concrete evidence. Some theories suggest that Arthur could be a blend of various historical figures, or perhaps a figure based on ancient Celtic legends. The lack of contemporary records and the scarcity of historical documents confirming his existence cast a shadow of uncertainty over his identity. A few early texts mention an Arthur, including Historia Brittonum and Annal Cambria. These works speak of a warrior who fought in numerous battles, such as the Battle of Badon. But were these battles part of a real historical event, or simply exaggerated accounts meant to enhance the legend of a heroic figure? Scholars still debate whether the Battle of Badon, described as Arthur's greatest victory, actually took place. Some suggest it was a real battle, fought around the year 500, while others believe it may be a product of literary invention. Researchers, archaeologists, and historians continue to search for real traces of Arthur, whether in England, Scotland, or even locations associated with legendary battles. Some believe the mythical Camelot Castle could have been a real fortress, though no archaeological site has been conclusively linked to Arthur's story. The question remains, Is there a real Arthur hidden beneath the layers of myth? Or is he merely a reflection of the heroic ideals of his time? Today, the figure of King Arthur remains alive in popular culture. Movies, books, and TV series keep the myth present in our lives. From Excalibur to Merlin, and modern adaptations like King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. The myth of King Arthur has not only survived over time, but also transformed, gaining new meanings and representations. These adaptations often take liberties with the source material, focusing on the fantasy and magic that have become central to Arthurian legends. Furthermore, Arthur's figure constantly resurfaces in discussions about national identity, especially in the United Kingdom, where he is seen by many as a symbol of unity and resistance. King Arthur represents an idealized past, a time when Britain stood strong against foreign invaders. At the same time, Arthur's idea is also questioned in a more skeptical and scientific world, where historical truth is increasingly valued. In modern interpretations, Arthur is often portrayed as a complex figure, caught between the mystical elements of the legend and the harsh realities of history. And now we come to the big question: was Arthur real? Or is he just a myth that was crafted and immortalized over the centuries? Perhaps the real answer is that, over time, the legend has become more important than the facts. King Arthur, whether real or not, represents an ideal that transcends the boundaries of time. His story reminds us of the human qualities we should all aspire to: courage, honor, and above all, the search for a greater purpose. But the legend of Arthur isn't just about the king himself. It's about the values that the legend represents: loyalty, bravery, honor, and the belief in a higher cause. Even if Arthur never existed in the way we imagine, the ideals he represents continue to inspire people today. His story has been told and retold, evolving with each generation, yet always maintaining a sense of timeless relevance. So what do you think? Was King Arthur a real hero, or just a legend that grew over time? The story of Arthur continues to challenge us, inspire us, and most importantly, make us question: what truly is myth and what is real? Perhaps it's not as important to know whether Arthur was a historical figure, but rather what his story can teach us about the human spirit and the ideals we strive for. The myth of King Arthur will endure, whether or not we ever find the historical man behind the legend.